we say that abortion in Uganda then is not completely illegal. It gives the restricting factor because it says no one is allowed to take the life of an unborn child except in special circumstances. The unfortunate bit about that is that section doesn't break down what those special circumstances are. So we can't stop talking about abortion. We can't stop talking about access to safe abortion. We can't stop talking about the magnitude of unsafe abortions and what that means to Uganda, what that means to Ugandan women and girls. Uganda has post-abortion care, which is usually something I laugh about. I'm like, why would you have post-abortion care without having safe abortion care services in the first place? Because by mere having post-abortion care, it means you're acknowledging that abortions are happening.
Welcome our viewers, this is Coherent TV and this is the Big Topic Show with your host Emanuela. Today we are going to discuss something very crucial, and that is navigating Uganda's legal landscape on abortion. And we will be looking at how we can move towards a legal framework when it comes to abortion care access being non-discriminative. And today we're having a guest with us here today, and she is going to let us know quite a lot of things, and we're going to really learn a lot of things from her. And maybe before we dive to our topic of today, we can get to know who she is, and then we get to catch up with our topic of today. You're most welcome, madam.
Thank you so much. Hello, viewers. My name is Tracy Ivy Nakayenga, and I work as the Advocacy and Communications Officer at Human Rights Awareness and Promotion Forum, HIRAF, which is a legal aid service provision organization. And we basically do our work around access to justice and also human rights. Thank you so much. For marginalized people.
Okay, well, thank you so much for giving us a brief of who you are and where you work from. And now just to start with the basics, what does the current framework of Ugandan law say when it comes into abortion care services?
Okay, so when it comes to abortion, the legal framework specifically on abortion is in the Constitution and also in the Penal Code. So in the Constitution, the specific articles that speak about abortion are Article 22.1. And this one basically speaks about the right to life and provides that no person shall be arbitrarily deprived of their life, meaning no person's life should be taken. So it prescribes the right to life. Then it proceeds in Article 22.2, which restricts, and this one is now the specific one that restricts abortion access, because it provides that no person has the right to terminate the life of an unborn child except as authorized by law. So that is the specific section now that speaks about abortion. However, it is also the basis of which we say that abortion in Uganda then is not completely illegal. It gives the restricting factor because it says no one is allowed to take the life of an unborn child except in special circumstances. The unfortunate bit about that is that section doesn't break down what those special circumstances are. Then Article 33 in the Constitution, this one specifically speaks about women's rights. It is the article that prescribes women's rights and basically, I don't like to use the word allow, but prescribes that women are full human beings and that they should enjoy the same rights as men. So that is about the Constitution and what it says about abortion. Now, when we go to the Penal Code, these are the new sections for the Penal Code as amended. So the new sections that speak about abortion, the first one is Section 130. So the Penal Code provisions that specifically speak about abortions, these are the sections as amended. So they are new sections from the previous ones that we knew. So Section 130, this one speaks about attempts to procure an abortion. So anybody who tries to carry out an abortion, to procure an abortion, basically to carry out an abortion, and is found guilty, that person is criminally or liable to 14 years, to up to 14 years in prison. Okay, then we have Section 131. This one is about procuring a miscarriage, that if you decide to carry out an abortion, that is the section that you will be charged under. Then we have section 132. This one specifically speaks about the supply of drugs with the intent to procure an abortion. So if you procure, for instance, as drugs etc., so any other thing or noxious substances that someone can procure, and the intention of procuring them is to carry out an abortion, that is the section. So if you buy a special tea or if you buy a special medicine and the intent of you buying that medicine is to help someone or for you yourself to carry out an abortion, then you are charged under section 131 and you're liable to 3 years imprisonment. Then lastly, section 195, this one criminalizes killing an unborn child. That one specifically sort of connected to the other article 22.2 in the Constitution about the right not to terminate the life of an unborn child. However, this in the Penal Code still, section 207 is the section now that also brings the exceptions to an abortion, because the section provides exemptions to abortion. It says a person isn't criminally liable for performing a surgical operation on an unborn child with reasonable care and skill to preserve the life of the mother. This essentially means that a health worker, a skilled medical professional, is allowed to carry out an abortion on a pregnant person in order to save the life of the mother. So that also then shows that abortion is actually not completely illegal, it is just restricted in Uganda. However, this section, like the sections, like the articles in the Constitution, also fail to provide any actionable guidance on any actionable guidance to health workers. What specifically are those instances where a health worker should support a mother to carry out an abortion in order to preserve their life?
Well, it's okay. You actually got to tap on that. Otherwise, I was going to ask on what could be those exceptions that the law really talks about, because as someone may wonder, if there are certain circumstances where abortion is allowed, what are they? And given now the restrictions that we have around access to abortion care services within the country, how best can Uganda, or how best can we move, how best can we move in ensuring that abortion is being recognized as a human right or as a healthcare issue within the country?
So maybe before that, I wanted to mention that the Ministry of Health came up with standard and guidelines on basically, there were guidances on breaking down now that broadness of when can a health worker carry out an abortion to preserve the mother's life. However, those guidelines were eventually stayed, meaning they were not passed and they cannot actively be used. So it is still a bit ambiguous what exactly the guidelines, but the guidelines basically had broken down things like in instances of rape, in instances of incest, in rape and defilement, in instances of incest, where the mother or the pregnant person is HIV positive, where the pregnancy is causing chronic illness, so things like high blood pressure, where it is detrimental to the mental health of the mother. Those were some instances that had been prescribed to sort of kind of define the broad sections of the exceptions to abortion. However, those guidelines have still not yet been passed by the Ministry of Health. In terms of what can be done, the first one is, of course, decriminalization of abortion. So it's around reinterpretation. Okay, maybe before I go to decriminalization, the first one can be reinterpretation and clarification of those exemptions as stated in the Penal Code and as stated in the Constitution. What are those exemptions to which a male medical worker can actually support a pregnant person to have an abortion? So it should include those broader grounds that were actually prescribed in the standards and guidelines that were stated. The second thing is Uganda should align its laws with international and regional instruments, sort of like the Maputo Protocol, which Uganda itself has actually ratified. And this protocol basically calls for access to safe abortion in certain instances, and Uganda should align itself or align its laws to the Maputo Protocol and what it prescribes on safe abortion. Then lastly, I can also say sustained advocacy. We can't stop talking about abortion. We can't stop talking about access to safe abortion. We can't stop talking about the magnitude of unsafe abortions and what that means to Uganda, what that means to Ugandan women and girls. So we have to continue having these conversations and sustaining the advocacy.
Well, I heard you talk about, you brought in something about a decriminalization of abortion, and being as working with HIRAF, what are you doing, or what do you think can be done in order to bring that to action?
Okay. So HIRAF and other organizations, but under the umbrella of the Coalition to Stop Maternal Mortality Due to Unsafe Abortion, in short, which is CISMOA, have put out several cases in the Constitutional Court. These cases, one of them challenges the constitutionality of the penal provisions. Another case calls for broadening or telling us what these exemptions to abortion are. So those petitions that were put in the Constitutional Court were consolidated into one petition and were presented before a new panel of judges. And so we are basically awaiting judgment to see what the Constitutional Court says about those provisions or those consolidated provisions. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. I can just imagine how women or young girls are handling their healthcare issues, because now if there are no clear laws, if there is a lot of restrictions in regards to accessing abortion care services, I can only imagine what is happening if the abortions are not happening or they are happening. But anyway, let's move on. I really want to know from you, beyond changing the law, how do you deal with the social and cultural resistance towards provision of abortion care services within the communities?
Okay, so of course we don't exist in a vacuum. We exist with our cultures, we exist with religion, and those are big forces that influence how people think or how people view certain issues. Like you mentioned before, abortions actually are happening, whether we want to accept it or not. Young girls and women are having abortions. So we can't act like we are in this utopia and everything is okay, because there are so many causes as to why someone will seek an abortion, which probably I won't get into, but abortions are actually happening. So the first thing we have to do is to accept. They say that there are some, I think it's the grieving process, and they say the last stage is acceptance. Once we get to that level of acceptance, then we shall be able to now actually do actionable things to make sure we deal with this issue, so that women and girls actually stop dying from unsafe abortions. The first one is having dialogues, talking, conversations. Conversations go a long way in terms of people understanding. Some people hate things because they don't quite understand them, or there's a lot of myths and misconceptions around the topic of abortion. So having continuous dialogues in communities with faith leaders, with cultural leaders, can go a long way. And I think one of the things we can do even in these dialogues is coming to common ground. The common ground is we don't want women and girls to die. The common ground should be that women's rights are human rights. And when we start from that angle, then we can be able to respect why safe abortion should be an accessible thing. The second thing is also humanizing the abortion issue. You will seldom see stories of families or girls and women that have been affected by unsafe abortions, but they are there. It's not that they're not there. It's just that this is a silent issue. Many media houses report on it, but from a victimizing approach, and then don't really dig deep to see why are these abortions happening. Okay, so I think we need to humanize abortion experiences. We need to put money behind it, for example, because we are in a capitalistic nation or in a capitalistic world. We need to put money behind it. How much money does it cost Uganda in unsafe abortions, right? We need to bring girls and women who are struggling because of unsafe abortions, families that have lost children who have died because of unsafe abortions. So we need to put a human face behind it. And then lastly is something I'm deeply passionate about, which is comprehensive sexuality education in schools. This does not mean teach 2-year-olds about sex. No. there's that misconception that when you say comprehensive sexuality education, you're saying now they should teach children how to have sex and who to have sex with. That is not what it is. Comprehensive sexuality education is tailored information around sexuality, around reproductive health, that all children, all people actually need. So we usually do awareness sessions with adolescent girls and young women in communities, and you realize there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's because these children don't know. They don't know things to do with family planning. They don't know things to do with protections. They don't know anything, right? They are or what they know is actually not what is the truth. So if they only got this information, the right information in schools, then I think that can go a long way in actually preventing the teenage pregnancies that in turn end up leading into unsafe abortion.
Well, I think you've said it right, because most times when I hear people talk about CSE, all that comes in my mind, or what people have in their minds, is that we are teaching their children to go ahead and have sex or something. But well, you've actually elaborated it the right way. I just want to know now, looking at a future for Uganda, if we are to envision a future for Uganda, how would you look at the legal framework of Uganda of ensuring abortion as a healthcare issue? How would you see it in Uganda?
Okay, so firstly, and maybe just go a little bit back to what we are talking about CSE, is there's a reason why Uganda has one of the highest rates of teenage pregnancies in sub-Saharan Africa. It means young people having sex, whether they want to allow or not. Young people having sex, consensual or non-consensual, that is a conversation we should also have, but there is sex happening, and that's why these high rates of teenage pregnancies keep coming up. So we need to do something about that. It is not okay for 13-year-olds, for 14-year-olds to be pregnant. It is not okay. So what can we do to make sure that we prevent that from happening? It is not okay that a 14-year-old dies because she tried to have an unsafe abortion, right? So we need to actually do something about ending those innocent lives, ending deaths of those innocent lives, sorry. In terms of what can be done, or the rights-based approach towards access to safe abortion, the first one, of course, would be decriminalizing abortion, which I hinted on earlier, that abortion should not, seeking for an abortion should not be a crime, okay? When we decriminalize, it's not going to tell more people to have abortions. In fact, statistics have shown in countries where abortion has been decriminalized, where it's not a crime to have an abortion, there's actually less abortions. You know why? Because people are not scared to go and seek these services, meaning many women are not dying from unsafe abortions. But also in those countries, there's access to to comprehensive reproductive information and services, meaning family planning is readily available, the information needed to around reproductive rights is available. So there's this whole, the anti-rights movement say if you decriminalize, then it's like you're telling girls you're giving them a free pass to go and have abortions. Yet it's actually not true. The statistics tell a different story. The second thing is Uganda has post-abortion care, which is usually something I laugh about. I'm like, why would you have post-abortion care without having safe abortion care services in the first place? Because by mere having post-abortion care, it means you're acknowledging that abortions are happening. And for someone to seek post-abortion care more often than not is because they had an unsafe abortion. However, if safe abortion care services that are affordable, that are quality, that are confidential are available, then in very few instances will actually women need post-abortion care services. The second one is in terms of equity in healthcare. Abortion is a poor woman's problem. Abortion is not a problem for rich women. Rich women like you and I, maybe, I hope I'm rich, but rich women like you and I can walk into any clinic and get an abortion at lunchtime and come back in the evening to work. So abortion is actually a poor woman's issue because it is women who are in poor conditions, poor living conditions, women and girls in those conditions, that actually bear the brunt of unsafe abortions. Number one, because they don't have access. They don't have access to information like you and I have. They don't have access to money to be able to pay for actual safe abortion services. So they end up taking matters into their own hands and actually having unsafe abortions. So even in a space of offering safe abortion services, there should be equity. It should be able to be affordable and accessible by every woman and girl who actually needs a safe abortion. And then lastly is embedding reproductive rights into our laws, embedding reproductive rights in the Constitution, embedding reproductive rights in the national health policy, for them to be actually recognized and seen that they are important and they are essential to the well-being of all.
Well, at least I've really got to know something interesting from you, that there are countries where abortion is legally accepted. And yeah, I think it's one thing that we have to look at as Uganda, of which I don't know when that will come in, but we're hopeful that maybe that will be realized.
If we get positive judgment, if we get positive judgment in the consolidated petitions, then that can be really a step in the right direction. So yeah, Uganda can get there.
Okay, well, as we are actually coming in close to the end of our program for today, and just before we sign out, is there something else that you would really love people to know out before we close out for our session of today?
Okay, maybe my parting shots are: safe abortion is essential health care. Women and girls have a right to choose what happens to their bodies, if they want to have children or not. They have the agency and the autonomy to make decisions about their bodies. There's this quote that says, "My body is not a democracy," meaning not everyone can make decisions on this body that is mine. It is actually a dictatorship. I choose what to do with my body, right? So that should be the case. And if you don't have a uterus, please don't be in discussions around and say, actually, your discussion should be pro-choice. You should not be in discussions of telling people, but women should not do ABCD with their uteruses. Women should not do ABCD with their bodies. It is not yours. It is a woman's body. And lastly, decriminalization of abortion will ensure that there's access to safe abortion services, but will also reduce the numbers of unsafe abortions and especially deaths that occur due to unsafe abortions.
Well, if you don't have a uterus, you are not going to be talking about women accessing abortion care services. Well, it has been a quite interesting discussion that we had today. And thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us a lot of insight when it comes to the framework, the legal framework of Uganda when it comes into access to abortion care services. And I believe someone out there really got a lot to learn. And yes, hopefully that this makes you have an insight of what it means for a woman to be able to access an abortion care services within Uganda. And it doesn't mean that abortions are not happening, just like she had said, but what best can we do to ensure that women and the young girls in our country don't get to be victims of unsafe abortion, and we keep them healthy and we don't get to lose them. And I don't think you would really want a woman or a young girl to lose a life to unsafe abortion. Otherwise, this has been the Big Topic Show, and we still continue with more other programs that are coming in. Keep watching and follow us on our social media handles on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram. And this show has been sponsored by Antikaki, and Antikaki is our toll-free helpline that you can reach out and access any information in regards to your sexual reproductive health and services. Thank you so much for watching. Keep tuned.